All right, good evening. We are sponsored for the week by Yishai and Rebecca Schwartz. Lili Nishmas, Rebecca's grandfather, Mr. Eliyahu ben Yaakov Verivka, whose yortzeit was on the 21st of Shvat. May Hashem have an Aliyah. We continue to learn on his behalf. And good, we're ready to go. We are, first of all, going to start talking about the Hazoos, the sprinklings of the Para Aduma. Just to mention, because every time I think we should mention the ashes of the Para Aduma. I don't remember to get the book. So this is a modern picture of the area of the Harabais area. That's where the Dome of the Rock is. They have a superimposition of where the Beis Hamikdash was. So this is the Beis Hamikdash. The opening was facing this way. There's a road that goes down here. That's because this is a valley. On this side here is a mountain. Right? That's a live picture, right? Arzaisim, right. And this is like the relief, right, where you can see sort of like that's what the Beis Hamikdash and this on this side. They had this this bridge that they would build across, bring the Para Aduma over the bridge, and then they would do the shechting of the Para Aduma and the service of the Para Aduma over here, facing the opening of the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so when we take a look, at...
That's Harzaisim, like where there's a cemetery?
Yes.
Was that there before?
The cemetery was not. Right. Let's take see. They always start. It's because they always take a picture, and this is the city of Yerushalayim over here. This is the mountain where the Para Aduma was being brought, and it's opposite, facing the opening into the Beis Hamikdash. So if you had a, if you were looking at sort of, you'd have this angle, right? It would you would look straight on at the Beis Hamikdash from the mountain across the way. Huh. Okay. So when we talk about that, you're supposed to sprinkle when you're supposed to sprinkle of the Para Aduma towards the Harabayis, this is what we're meaning. And you're sprinkling from across the mountain, facing the Beis Hamikdash, going this direction, which, of course, this direction is west, right? That's not a bad thought, but I'm going to save it for a little bit later. So I'm going to use the pictures here just for the sake of keeping it. Keeping us on track here, but essentially that's what I wanted to show. But north, south, east, west, right? So if you're taking a look at this, right, this is north, this is east, this is west. So facing to the west, it would face west to the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, the directions are going to be important to note as we will see. Okay, I'm going to mark this just in case we need it again. Let's forget exactly what we're mentioning and going with. I'm on. Good. Okay. Good. Sheva Hazos Sheba Para. There are seven sprinklings. The seven sprinklings of the blood of the Para Aduma, which goes towards the Ol Moed. We say literally opposite the Ol Moed. Ma'akva zuazu. They are all required because it says chukah, right? Then it says Sheva Hazos shall bein. She'al bein habadim v'shal mizbeach hazahav v'shal haparoches. We also said the seven sprinklings that they go into the Kodesh HaKodashim and sprinkle them between the poles of the Aron, and also then they would go out into the Beis Hamikdash chamber itself and sprinkle it towards the paroches, and then they would make the applications on the gold mizbeach. All of those are ma'akva zuazu. They are all required. How do we know that? So Yom Kippurim, remember there's four different internal sacrifices we've been talking about. The two on Yom Kippur, and then we have the Par El Davar and the Par of the Kohen Mashiach. So the Yom Kippurim, the ones that are Yom Kippur, those are simple. Because if the pasuk says Chukah, by Yom Kippur service it says Chukah, so we know everything is required. The Par Kohen Mashiach u the Par El Davar Shel Tzibor. There's five, right? This actually the other three are the Kohen Mashuach, the anointed coins, the Kohen Gadol's offering, the Paralim Davar of the Beis Din, and the goat that was brought for Avodah Zarah. So all of those Kidditanya we learn in a brisa. Pasuk says in Vayikra Daled Pasuk Chaf Asala Par Kasher Asala Par. First, before that, right? It talks about the Par Ha'elam. It talks about. The bull that was talking about the Kohen Mashiach, that one's the first, the Kohen Gadol offering. Then after that, it comes back and it says, "V'asal apar," you should do to this bull the same way you did to the other one. So now we've got that, both of them. Now, Matamid Lomar, why is it telling me that you should do it the same way, especially since if you read through the parsha, it already told us that you're supposed to do it 7 times by this bull. Then it says, and you do the 7 times, and then it says, just like you did the other one. Well, why do you have to tell me just like I did the other one? The answer is lichbol bahazos, to tell me a duplicate. It's a double language, and we know that double languages are important because double languages mean that it is required. Daf Chav Zayin Beis. Shimchis arachas min hamatanos lo asakum. If you're forgetting any of them, then it's no good. And since it's required by one of those offerings, we had learned in Maseches Zvachim, we compared all of those offerings together, and we said whatever the rules are by one, rules by all, and therefore all of them are required. Tanur Rabbanan, our rabbis learned. Sheva hazos sheba para, the 7 sprinklings of the blood by the para aduma she'ason bein shelo lishman bein shelo mechuvanos. Whether you do them shelo lishma, right? You don't have in mind for the blood of the paraduma, or you don't do them opposite the opening. That's why we show the pictures, right, of where we're standing by the mountains. You're supposed to be facing the opening of the basement. If you're not opposite that Ol Moed, they are psulos. Then that sprinkling is no good. Shebifnim, now the blood sprinklings of inside on Yom Kippur and the Kohen Mashiach and the Param Davar and the Syria Avodah Zarah, all of those offerings. Shebemitzora, and the sprinklings of the Mitzorah, right? The Mitzorah, remember, was standing. We get our model of the Beis HaMikdash here.
When Mashiach comes, will Yom Kippur still be a fast day?
Yes, because it's still a day of atonement, right? We're still getting an atonement. This Yom Kippur is not a fast day for any kind of negative thing that happened. We're just fasting because we're trying to get atonement. So, if you recall, right, in this picture, right, we've got our Beis HaMikdash. This gate here is the Shar Nikanor. That's where the Metzorah wasn't allowed to go inside this courtyard area in front of the Beis HaMikdash. He would stand outside by this door and stick his hand inside. Okay, so the Metzorah, the Kohen would be in the Azara, and then he would sprinkle the oil towards the Kodesh Kodashim. So if he does it Shalol Lishman, if he does it not for the sake of the right offering, they're psulos. So that's no good either. Shalom mechuvanos. Now, if you're inside the Beis HaMikdash and you've got these the korbanos that you're sprinkling by Yom Kippur, so those are ksheros. So if you sprinkle the wrong direction, you miss. You don't go towards the paroches. So those are okay.
That type of person is maybe.
Okay, so now V'hatanya, but we have a brisa that discusses this. We said by the paraduma. We said that if they're not directly opposite, they don't count. V'hatanya, we said a brisa. Gabe para, by the paraduma, shalol lishman psulos. So if they're not lishma, then they're pasul. That's consistent. However, shalom mechuvanos ksheros. But if they're not opposite the opening of the Beis HaMikdash, then they're still kosher. So how do you explain the two brises? One says it's kosher, one says it's not. Somer Rav Chisda lo kasher, Rav Chisda not a contradiction. Ha Rabbi Yehuda v'ha is a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Detanya, we learn in a brisa. Mechusrei kapara, if you have a person who is tameh, we have specific types that are chayev in some kind of korban after they're in their purification process. Metzorah, Azava, and a Yoledas, woman who gave birth. All 3 of those have to wait a certain amount of time. Then they approach, they go to the mikvah, they come into the Beis HaMikdash, they have offerings that they're supposed to bring. If before they bring their offerings, they're called mechusrei kapara. So if a mechusar kapara, shenichnesu la'azara, if that person comes into the azara, okay, the azara again is, I should keep this part open, right? Not a bad picture, okay? Right? They can't, the ones who are mechusar kapara, so if they come into the azara area, that's inside this azara area, if they come into there, bishogig, if they do it bishogig, they're chayev achatos, they're going to bring a sin offering. B'mezid, if they do it on purpose, under karis, they get karis. Vein tzarech lomar tvul yom, for sure, a tvul yom. A tvul yom is somebody who's tameh, goes to the mikveh that day. They're more tameh, ushar kol tmeim, and also everybody else who's more tameh than that, right? So they're going to, if they come in, they're going to bring those they're chayav achatos if they come into the azara bishogeg, and kares if they come in b'mezid. Okay, so that's what we said. Tahorim shenichnesu lifnim mibchitzasan. So now, the people who are tahor. So we have these rules, the places they're allowed to go. A person who's bringing a korbanos comes in right into the beginning area of the Beis Hamikdash area. Let's see if there's a better overhead view. If there's a better overhead view, that's a great one. This isn't bad. Okay, here's our better overhead view. Okay, it's not as detailed, whatever, but it's easy to see. These are steps. This area right here in front, between the Shar Nicanor and the steps, is the place where the Jewish people would stand when they're bringing their korbanos. They would come into the Azar, but they're not supposed to go beyond that. The Kohanim are supposed to go into this area. Okay, so if they come in lehech, so they're supposed to tahorim. So if they're tahor, shenichnusu lifnim b'mechitzason. So if they come beyond the 11, a Yisrael goes beyond those 11 amos and comes into the Azara from, and we're going to say this is moving from east to west. East is this side, west is this side. So they come further to the west inside. Lehechal, if they come into the Hechal, that's when they come into the Beis Hamikdash area here, the Hechal itself. Kulo ba'arboim, if they go in there, they get 40 lashes. Zolosas say that they're not allowed. Yisrael who's tahor cannot go into that area.
They'll be dead by the end.
Well, like we said, we always measure them, like we said in Menachos, to be able to verify that we're not going to kill them. Okay? Mi beis la parochas, if they come into the curtain area, into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, so then El Pnei HaKapores, which then comes Pnei HaKapores, meaning they stand opposite the Aron Kodesh, which is even closer, B'misa. Then they're Chayav Misa, B'dei Shemayim, right? Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol Heichal Kulo mi Beis La Parochas Ba'ar Bayim. He says no. Rabbi Yehuda says, if they come into the Beis Hamikdash area, so then you're Chayav 40 lashes. If you come into the Kodesh HaKodashim, 40 lashes. The El Pnei HaKapores B'misa. But if you come to the Aron, that's when you're Chayav Misa. Okay, so there's a dispute between Racham and Rabbi Yehuda about if you enter the Kodesh Kodashim but don't come to the Aron. So, b'mai kamiflagi, I'm going to put a little bookmark just in case we wind up coming back to this. B'mai kamiflagi. So, what is the argument based on? B'haikra, it's this pasuk in Vayikra. Pasuk says, "Vayomer Hashem al Moshe." Hashem says to Moshe, "Daber el Aaron achicha, speak to Aaron your brother. Ve'al yavo bechol eis el hakodesh mi beis la parochas." You're not allowed to come at any point to the Kodesh area. That's area number 1. Mi beis la parochas, inside the parochas, area number 2. El pnei hakapores asher al Aron, and in front of the covering, the ark's cover, which is on the Aron, v'lo yamus, and you will not die. So there's 3 different areas. So Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan are learning this pasuk. They say as follows: El HaKodesh, to the Kodesh, that's place number 1, below Yavo. That's a losasa. You shall not go there. So a Torah person shall not go into the Beis Hamikdash area, right? That seems to imply even a Kohen, right? Because it's talking to Aaron, seems to me, right? And then it would say you can't go in unless you have business there, right? You're doing a particular avoda. Mi beis la parochas vel pnei kapores. Then comes the next 2 areas. Inside the curtain and in front of the Aron, that's below Yamus. That's the second part of the pasuk, and you shall not die. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Rabbi Yehuda says, El HaKodesh El HaKodesh umi beis la parochas. First 2 things in the pasuk are into the Kodesh and inside of the curtain. That's below Yavel. That's talking about where you shall not come and you'll get Malchus. The El Pnei Kaporos, only the last one, standing in front of the cover of the Aron, below Yamos, that's when you get Misa. Okay, so now, my time, my Hudurabanan. Basically, we have 3 things and 2 punishments. Right? We have 3 stages and 2 punishments. You get lashes, you get Misa. And then we have Kodesh inside the Parochas in front of the Kaporas. Are 2 over on this part and 1 over here, or is 1 over here and 2 on this side? That's how we're discussing this. My time, my Rabbanan, what are the Rabbanan holding? Because they say, look, if what you're saying is true, Kedekama Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Yehuda says, Lichtov Rachmana, all the Torah would have had to say is El HaKodesh. Don't come into the Kodesh, right? That's where you're going to get Malchus. Vel Pnei Kapores. And also don't come into the Kaporas, velo boy mi beis la parochas. You don't have to talk about me beis la parochas. Why? Because you don't get misa until you come to the kaporas. Just once you come to the kodesh, you get malchus. Why do you have to say, and also inside the curtain? Of course you're getting malchus when you come into the curtain, because if you get malchus when you come into the curtain, you're already inside the kodesh. You're already getting malchus.
The curtain is the mechitza between the regular.
That's right, but you're already inside the Beis Hamikdash at that point. So you already got malchus at that point. So therefore, v'ana amina heichal michayev mi beis la parochas mi boy. If I'm already going to get chayev malchus by coming into the Beis Hamikdash, then why would it then still be malchus by coming into the parochas? Mi beis la kaporas de kasav rachmana lomali. Why does the Torah have to specify coming into the curtain? Shma mina b'misa. Must be telling me that's a new punishment, and that's where you get misa. For Rabbi Yehuda says, no, not so. I kasav rachmana el hakodesh velo kasav mi beis la parochas. If the pasuk had only said, don't go into the Beis Hamikdash, and it didn't write inside the curtain, hava mina my kodesh, I would have thought, you know what kodesh is? Mi beis la parochas. Kodesh is inside of the curtain. Because that's a holier place, what's Kodesh? The answer is, don't go to the Kodesh and also don't go into the Paroch, but beyond the Parochas. Why? Because those are both places that you're going to get Malchus. Aval Heichal, Lav, Namilo. I might have thought if it only told me, don't go to the Kodesh, because you'll get Malchus, I might have thought, well, what's Kodesh? Kodesh is inside the Parochas. So therefore the Pasuk has to specify, the Kodesh you get Malchus, inside the Parochas also, so now I know there's inside the Parochas, and then there's another Kodesh place that I'm going to get Malchus for as well, and then coming before the Aron gets me Misa. Rabbanan will say, no, you can't say the word Kodesh means only inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, because Ahu lo matzi samar, you can't explain that the word Kodesh means only inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Tehechal kulo ikre Kodesh, the whole Heichal for sure is called Kodesh. Shenamar, as the pasuk says in Shmos, v'hivdira haparochas lochem bein hakodesh ubein hakodesh hakadoshim. As Yehuda says, the parochas' job is to split between the Kodesh and the Kodesh hakadoshim. So therefore, if the pasuk uses the word Kodesh, it means the whole Beis Hamikdash area. Okay, now that's the Rabbanan's view. But Rabbi Yehuda, my ta'ameh, what's Rabbi Yehuda's reasoning? Because Rabbanan, if the rabbis were right, so then lichtov rachmana el hakodesh mi beis la parochas velo boi el panei kaporas. If the rabbis are right that you are getting malchus when you are coming over to you're getting misa when you walk into the Kodesh Kodashim, then you should have just written El HaKodesh. You get one thing, and then I wouldn't need to mention El Panei Kaporas. You're already getting misa when you walked into the Kodesh Kodashim. Why are you bothering to tell me that you get misa when you walk up to the Aron? You're already chayav misa, right? V'ana mina El Pnei Kapor. So Ana Amino, I'm saying already mi beis la parochas b'misa. You're getting misa just by walking into the Kodesh HaKodashim. El Pnei Kaporas mi boy. Why would I have to then specify that I have to walk up to the Aron? El Pnei Kaporas because of Rachman Lamali. What's the point of saying that only when you walk up to the Aron? Shma mina el pnei kaporas misa. You only get misa when you walk up to the Aron. Mi beis la parochas baz hara. It's a losa say you get malchus by walking into the Kodesh HaKodashim. V'Rabbanan, so Rabbanan hachanami delot tzarich. You're right. El pnei kaporas is not necessary. You're getting misa as soon as you walk into that Kodesh HaKodashim. V'hayde kasav rachman el pnei kaporas. Why does it tell me walking up to the kaporas? Lemeute derech mishupash. Question is, if I go in another way other than straight, what if we said there was a window in the back wall? What if you somehow came through the ceiling, right? Or let's say you came in, some other way other than the front way.
I'm sorry. You're chayav.
So then the pasuk is telling me it doesn't matter how you came in, you're chayav in any event. Kidatana de Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, like we learn in the Brayso of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Pasuk says al peneha kaporas kedma. Right, pasuk says that you're supposed to take the blood of the par on Yom Kippur and you're supposed to sprinkle it on the face or towards the kapores to the east. So now, what does that mean? Zebana av. This tells me, in others, because you're sprinkling it towards the kapores, towards the parochas, which is, or towards the kapores, which is westward, right? No, but what we mean is, when you sprinkle it towards the Aron, you're sprinkling it on the eastmost part of the Aron. And when you're sprinkling it towards the west, towards the Parochas, you're sprinkling it on the east-facing side. right? Because you're standing to the east of it, facing west. So you're sprinkling on the east-facing wall, the east-facing part. Okay, that got me confused for a little bit because you're facing west, but that's what it means. You're sprinkling it on the east-facing part. So zebana av. So this is a general rule. Kol makom shenamar pnei. Whenever the word pnei is written, the face of eno ela pnei kodim. It means the eastern face, right? So therefore, that's generally the case. So therefore, when this says al pnei hakapores, where this is that it's supposed to be on the east, that means to tell me that right, that tells me that I come into the area el pnei hakapores means you're not chayav misa unless you walk in the normal way. Because if I walk in the normal way, then I'm facing the east side of the Aron, then I'm chayiv. But if a person were to come into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, let's say, from the side or the back wall or some other way, then you would not be chayiv misa for coming in. That's what it means. Rabbi Yehuda says, Lema kropnei my el shmamina el dafka. So Rabbi Yehuda says, you're right. It says pnei. Why el pnei? The answer is both of those things. Tell me I'm not chayiv misa until I get to the parochas, to the kapores. And second of all, it also has to be that you walk in from the normal front side, facing the east side of the Aron. For Rabbanan, el lav dafka. Rabbanan say the word el is not really an important extra word. Therefore, that doesn't teach me anything. That's why the Rabbanan. So essentially, Rabbanan say you walk into the Kodesh Kodashim, you're chayiv misa, and Rabbi Yehuda says no, you're still chayav malchus at that point. For Rabbi Yehuda, de amar el pnei kaporas davka. Okay, if Rabbi Yehuda is going to take a look at the word, and he says the word el pnei means literally, right? You have to walk up to the Aron in order to be chayav misa. So v'hiza el nochach nami davka. So then, how are you going to explain by the paraduma? The paraduma says, that's why we got to this, right? If you sprinkle the blood towards the Kodesh HaKodashim, right? You're standing on a mountain all the way across. You're sprinkling it in that direction. So el nochach means nami dafka. It has to be precise. You have to literally be standing across. You can't be throwing it in the general direction. You got to be standing straight across. So the Rabbanan say me the hasam lav dafka. If going into the Kodesh HaKodashim, the word el doesn't mean literally right to it. Sachanami lav dafka also means in the general direction. It doesn't have to be specifically across and precise. That explains the argument in the Brisos that says, one says that if you're not sprinkling the blood of the paraduma directly, then it is kosher. The other one says if you're not sprinkling directly, it is pasul. Argument between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda. Very good. Maskif la Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says to Rav Chisda, I'm not so sure. Le Rabbi Yehuda, mid el dafka. If Rabbi Yehuda says the word el means directly across from, so then al nami dafka. The word is al pnei hakapores, not el, right? So al and el are two different words. Right? The slight difference, right? Al pnei hakapores.
Al is on, el is two.
Exactly. Ella, so he says that is not a explanation. Ella demikdash sheni delo havu aron v'kapores hachinami delo ovid hazos. The answer is that the in the second Beis Hamikdash that there wasn't the Aron was not there because they hid the Aron at the end of the first Beis Hamikdash to protect it from the people who were invading. And King Yoshio held it.
Do we know where they hid it?
If we knew where it was, we'd be going and finding it. We do not know where it is. So
warehouse in a big box, right?
That's how I saw it. That's right. So now, so does that mean that if al means directly upon it anyway, right? So then how did they do the sprinkling of the blood on Yom Kippur in the second Beis Hamikdash? They walked into the Kodesh Kodashim, there's no Aron there. So what were they sprinkling it upon? So, Amar Rabba Bar Ula Amar Kra. So Rabba Bar Ula says that the pasuk says by Yom Kippur v'chiper es mikdash hakodesh, that it is going to cause an atonement in the holy of the holies, meaning makom hamakudash lakodesh, the location where the holiness would have been. So therefore, even though the Aron is not there, you still can fulfill your service of the Yom Kippur by sprinkling towards the location where the...
They didn't have the Mishkan to replace the Beit HaMikdash, or was only in the...
No, they didn't. The Mishkan, we remember, you got to go back, right? Remember, that's end of Zachin, right? The Mishkan was already out of use by the time they built the Beis HaMikdash. Rava Amar, Rava says, Ha v'ha Rabbanon. So Rava says, okay, Ha v'ha means both brisos are the rabbi's view, right? We had answered before that El, Al, both of them mean exactly the right place. Okay, fine. And so therefore, one was Rabbi Yehuda, one was the Rabbanan. Now we're saying they're both the Rabbanan on Chav Chesem and Aleph. Ha dekai Mizrach umarav ve'adi. Ha dekai tzafon v'daram ve'adi. The answer is that it depends. If you're on the east facing west and you're sprinkling, even if it's not directly towards the basement, you're okay. If you're facing north-south, you're way off. So therefore, that's the difference, right? Meaning it has to be towards the Beis HaMikdash. It can be off, slightly left, right. That doesn't. But if you're in the wrong direction completely, that's where the Rabbanan say it's not kosher. Okay, so that's the difference in the brises. Amar Mar. So Mar said, we brought the brisa above. V'shebifnim v'shebemetzora shelo lishmam psulos. We said that the sprinkling of the blood of the inner chatos and also for the metzora, that if you do them shelo lishman, if you do them not for the sake of the korban, they're pasul. Shelo mechuvanos ksheros, but if they're not exactly in the right direction, so then they are kosher. Vehatanya, but we have another brisa. Bein shelo lishman, bein shelo mechuvanos ksheros. It doesn't matter if they're always kosher. So now we have an argument whether they were lishma or not lishma. Are they kosher or are they not kosher? So Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says lo kasha. It's not a contradiction. This is ha Rabbi Eliezer v'ha Rabbanan. It's the old argument between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan, because Rabbi Eliezer demakish oshim lechatas. Remember, the only offering that's not valid is that if you don't have the right intent is a chatos. So that's fine by Yom Kippur offerings. The Yom Kippur offerings are a chatos. But the Metzora offering isn't a chatos. The Metzora offering is an asham. It's a. Why would an asham be shalol l'shma? Why would it be puzzled? The answer is, this is the old Rabbi Eliezer who says, ka chatas ka asham. The chatas and the asham are related to each other. And just like, right, makish nami log lo asham. And he also compares the oil, the sprinkling of the oil, to the asham, because that's where it comes with the asham, the lug of oil, that you bring with this korban of the metzora comes with the asham, the guilt offering. So he says, since the asham is like a chatos and that it's invalid, it's a hekish between the two, and because ka chatos ka asham, and the lug into the asham, therefore, if you have in mind sprinkling and it's not lishma for the lug of oil, then it's no good. Rabbanan lo makshi, the Rabbanan don't make such a hekish connection between an asham and the chatos. That's not how they agree. Now the problem is that we had another Gemara in Maseches Vachim. You can't make a hekish to a hekish. Hekish to a hekish is against the rules. Rabbi Elazar v'chidavar halamed behekish chozer malamed behekish. You can't go from hekish 1 to hekish 2, A to B to C. Can't do that when it comes to kodshim. Elam or Rava, so Rava says no. Hava harabanan, it's not Rabbi Elazar. This is all a Rabbanan thing. Kan lahachshir, kan lahartzos. The difference is whether the korban is valid, right? We said that if you do a korban asham shalol l'shma, the korban is valid, it just doesn't count for its owner. So as far as it being a kosher korban and the kohanim can eat the remainder, it is. As far as it being acceptable, lahartzos, as far as it being accepted for the owner, it isn't. And the Metzora has to bring another korban. Okay, good. Menorah. Says the Mishnah. Shiva knei menorah ma'akvin zesa. You need all 7 of the branches of the candelabra. And this is the branches of our candelabra, right? And we're going to discuss all about this. We're going to use this diagram a lot, right? And this actually is...
Where do we get the number 8 from on Hanukkah?
Because we have 8 days on Hanukkah. And we're going to see there's a very big problem because you can't make any replicas of this menorah with 7, right? 7 is a number you cannot do. So, 2 different versions of it. rounded or straight. If you look in the Meforshim, generally speaking, you see Rashi uses the word alexon, meaning a diagonal, when he talks about the menorah. The Rambam draws a picture, and I actually have a copy of the Rambam's picture, which is allegedly in his own handwriting,
Really?
right? That's why I got the pictures, right? These are not digital AI pictures. My pictures. The Rambam's literal handwriting where he drew the menorah. I got that off the internet. So it was listed in the notes. I went looking for it in the notes in the art scroll. He quotes. He's got this the Kefach edition of the Rambam and whatever. He redraws it, but the Rambam has the original. Okay, anyway, we'll see it in a second. I'm going to open my computer in a second. Either straight or curved. Why curved? If everybody the Rishonim seem to keep saying it straight. Remember that Rashi and the Rambam never actually saw the menorah. However, there are people who did see a menorah. And they drew, let's see if I can get into my computer.
The Romans certainly did.
Yes.
The arch.
Arch of Titus, right?
Is it only gone to his computer's arguments?
Okay.
In Rome, I've seen it.
So this is the Arch of Titus,
Yep.
the zoom-in version of the menorah. Now, people comment on it that it has its inconsistencies, as we're going to see what the actual. But I don't know that the artist who is drawing the Arch of Titus himself may not have seen the menorah, but certainly you can say maybe he saw one from a distance, or he drew essentially what is the menorah, right? Size and shape. Okay.
Yep.
Now we scroll down to my next picture. This, however, this is a coin from the Chashmonaim. The Chashmonaim certainly saw their menorah, right? And again, it looks pretty curved.
Yep.
Now, the details are not attached to it. So we're going to see that there's balls and flowers and curved.
Right.
When you're making that coin, I guess it was rudimentary. But the point is that you can see that it's curved, and there are many other incidences. This is a picture of the golden menorah that the Temple Institute made. And we're going to see that I have lots of problems and questions on it. I have no idea why they did this.
Picture?
But,
You have a lot of questions. Probably a question about the picture.
well, not on the picture,
itself.
but the menorah itself, how they did, why they did it. But okay. But in any event, they built this menorah. Okay. This is the Rambam. Okay. The Rambam actually drew this. Okay. And it's pretty straight. And then the others' commentaries, they cleaned it up a little bit in order to make, you'll see in the Gemara, that basically they moved all the goblets and things into the right locations, as we're going to see. The Rambam's essential point that he's trying to make is so that you can see where all the goblets and the balls and the flowers, how many there were on which branch, and the branches being straight, and so they redrew it in this sort of a way. Okay? Before I got this picture on the back of the art scroll, I got this picture, but we're going to use the one in the back of the art scroll, which is going to be nicer for what we chose. But I wanted to show that because this issue of whether you have curved or straight, right?
Our friends over at Chabad, of course, they actually go by the Rambam, right?
That's right. The Rambam's got straight. We always say that Rambam, I always had heard the Rambam says straight and Rashi says curved, but then I saw that Rashi actually uses the word alexon, which means a diagonal, which is a straight line. So not really. And so I took a look and I said, well, what did they put back here in the back of the art scroll? And the answer is they just wrote, we depict two different shapes for the stems of the menorah. One shows them curved, one and the other straight. And they do not cite a source for who says which.
Right.
Seems to me almost everybody says straight, except that if you look at the archaeological evidence, every picture of the menorah that you will find on mosaics, coins, anything that was existent during the times of the second base of English depicts it curved. So that's where the curved seems to come from, archaeological evidence. Okay, you got 7 branches of the menorah. They're ma'akvin zeh. If you're missing any of them, the menorah is not kosher. Shiva neroseha. The 7 lights at the top of each menorah is ma'akvin zeh. You would need to have all of them. The menorah is puzzle if you're missing any of them lit. Shtei parshios sheba mezuzah makvos zuzus. Now you see, how are we going to get to all of the nice topics that we want to be talking about from all the piggle topics that we've been talking about?
Oh, you said the word again.
2 parshios of Mizrach, because I just want to be able to make sure there's a day doesn't go by and miss out on something else. Tomorrow's Shiur is just going to go piggle and let's go. Just so I can get it out of the way at the beginning. Shtei parshios sheba mezuzah ma'akvos zuzu. 2 parshios in the mezuzah, right? Shema and v'haya im shamoa. So those are required. Can't have a mezuzah with one and not the other. V'afilu kosav echad ma'akvin. And even if one letter is wrong, then it's no good. Pasuk says uksav tam, just like we had written by lulav ulekach tam, right? You have to take them, and we said lekicha tama. Also, this has to be ksiva tama, perfect writing. Any of the letters are missing, the whole mezuzah is no good. Arba parshil shebetfilin makvin zuasu. There are 4 parshios in tefillin. Rashi says they are Shema Yisrael v'Haya im Shemoah, Kadesh li kol bechor, and v'Haya kiviyecha. Right, those 2 ones. Shema Yisrael is in Dvarim, Parak Vav. V'Haya Shemoah is in Dvarim, Parak Yud Aleph. Kadesh li kol bechor and v'Haya kiviyecha are both in Parak Yud Gimel of Shmos. And so all of those parshios need to be there. V'afilu kosav echad ma'akvin. If one of the letters is no good, then it ruins your tefillin. Arba tzitzios ma'akvos zuazu. 4 corners of tzitzis. If you're missing one of the tzitzis is puzzle, then the whole thing is no good, right? She'arbasa mitzvah achas. It's all 4 corners is one. All 4 fringes are one mitzvah. And Rabbi Shmuel disagrees. He says arbasa and arba mitzvos. All 4 of them are 4 separate mitzvos. Seems to be that if you're missing one of them, then you should wear it because 3 are still good. Right, so that's Rabbi Shmuel. We'll see him later on. Now, let's start talking about the menorah. My taima, what is the reason why you need all 7 branches of the menorah? Havaya ksiv behu. It says by the pasuk, Kaf toreim v'kanosam mimena yihiyu. It shall be. Whenever you see Havaya, it shall be, that means it's required. Tana Rabbanan rabbis learn, menorah haisa ba'a min ha'eshes. That the menorah was one solid piece. Okay, and min hazav, and it was also gold. Asa min hagrutos psula. If you make it from scraps of gold put together, so then it's puzzle. Mishar mine matachos shera. If you make it out of other types of metal, it's kosher. Right? Zav, we're going to see gold is not ma'akev. It's not required. If it's and gold and being made out of one solid piece are ma'akev. Now, this is where I come to the Temple Institute, and I ask the question, Ma'akev means it's required. This is where I come to question the Temple Institute, and I don't know, and I'm sure I'm sure they're smart people. They read the same Gemara.
Not one piece.
It is definitely not one piece. Not only isn't it one piece, but it's not even solid gold.
Oh, wow.
Now, they talk about their menorah that they built is worth $3 million, but they also describe on their website how they made it. And they made it because they realized that gold is a very soft metal. And as they made it, the branches, the weight of the branches kept bending and they couldn't keep it together. Wow. So what they did is they made it out of brass or brass under bronze underneath, right? They said, right? And what they did was they talk about how they tried to make it, pouring into a mold or beating it out into one piece. They made it out of brass and then they plated it with gold. And this is how they show them dipping it in and getting it plated with gold, and it has a millimeter thick. Millimeter thick of gold all the way around it, which is a significant amount of gold. Yeah. But it's not solid gold, and it's not pounded out of one piece. And so, yeah. Now it says this is what it's supposed to be. We receive 1 kikar of pure gold. So I don't know. I don't know. It seems to me that that's not how I'm reading the Gemara, but you can clearly see how they made it, right? You could clearly see they've got their metal under skeleton underneath it.
Right. And this was built for the intention that it would be used?
That's what they say. And otherwise, it's a bigger problem, which is we're going to see there's a prohibition against making any replicas of utensils. Building a menorah with 7 branches is also prohibited. So if they made it and it's not the real thing, even if it's made out of other materials, it can be a problem. So I don't know. I wasn't involved. They didn't ask me.
Wow. So if it's made out of gold, it has to be from one.
That's right. We're going to see that. Right?
But if it's made from other metals, it doesn't have to be?
That's what we're going to see right now. My shna mina grutos psula. Why is it that if you make it from scraps, it's puzzle? Pasuk says miksha. Right? It says that it has to be miksha beaten. It says the full pasuk is miksha te'aseh hamenorah. It shall be beaten. And the pasuk then says havaya. Right? It says gvie'eha u'kaftoreh u'pracheha mimena yihiyu. Right? It's goblets, it's the kaftor, the balls, and the flowers shall be from it. From it, again, yiyu means it is required. So therefore, miksha, same pasuk, miksha, beating has to be required. Well, if that's true, so then sharmini matachos nami, then also it should be, can't also make it out of any other metal. So because the pasuk says zahav, so it says gold, and then it says has to be made out of zahav tahor, the same pasuk. Then it says havaya. So why isn't gold required? So the answer is Amar Kra. The pasuk then says in the pasuk te'aseh, it shall be made. Right? The pasuk is vasis minor zahav tahor miksha te'aseh hamenorah. So lerabos. So that word te'aseh means it can be made in other ways than the one listed in this pasuk. Sharmini matachos tells us that other types of metal can be used. And so we're going to see those two things are connected together. The fact that it needs to be beaten out of a single piece and gold are connected. So when you make it out of gold, beaten out of a single piece, when it's made out of metal, it can be other pieces of metal put together. Ve'ema l'rabos grutos. Now, if you're going to be including something else, then how do you know it doesn't mean that you make it out of gold beaten, and then if you can't make it out of that, we will include making out of gold pieces. Right? I can make the arm and attach it. I can make the base and attach it. Lo salka daitoch. That I can't say because de amiksha ksiva havaya. The word havaya, that it shall be, is talking about the beating of making it beaten out of one piece. Right? The pasuk says, right? You make the menorah zav to her. Then it says miksha ta'aseh. It shall be beaten. That's how it shall be done. Menorah yerecha v'kana gvia kaftar fracha mimena yihiu. That all of the shapes shall be taken from it, meaning that you're going to make the shapes from the solid piece. Therefore, if you're going to include which one is the one that's required, the single piece or the gold, the answer is the gold is the one that's not as required. The single piece is required. Okay, so now te'as. But Te'as said Nami amikshaksiv. But it also says it shall be built, which is about, meaning also about the beating it out of the single piece. So the answer is miksha la'akiv. You're right. It has the word miksha. It shall be beaten out of a single piece twice. Once by the pasuk in Chaf Hey Lamed Aleph. Once in pasuk Chaf in Parak Chaf Hey. Pasuk Chaf Parak Chaf Hey. Pasuk Lamed Vav. Right, again it says kula miksha achas zahav tahor, so that's la'akiv to say it's required. Yeah, but the word zahav is also written in another pasuk. So nami la'akiv, the zahav should also, the gold should also be. So haimai, well, how are you going to explain this? I amart bishlama. So you're going to see that it gets confusing because gold and all of these words are written several times in several different sections. So each time it's going to teach me something else. I amart bishlama min hagrutos. Psula, if you're going to tell me that, it means to tell me that if you're going to put it into pieces, assemble it in pieces, that it's pasul. Mishar mine matachos ksher, but other types of metals, it's kosher. Hainu zahav miksha. So I can have an explanation for how to interpret how each time the word zahav is used and each time the word miksha is used. Lidrasha, which we're going to see in a moment. We've got an explanation for how every time it's used. Ela iamart mina grutos ksher, but if you're going to explain it the other way, that pieces, assembling in pieces is kosher, mishar mini matachos psula, but it's pasul out of any other metal, then zav miksha my drasha, then you're going to see the drashas don't work out. So we just are forced into it because there's no other way to explain the psukim. My drasha, here's how the drashas work. Detanya, we're in our brisa. We have a pasuk, Shmos Chaf Hey Perak, Shmos Perak Chaf Hey Pasuk Lamed Tes. Kikar zahav tahor yaseh osa. A solid block of gold, you shall make it, as kol hakelim ha'ela, all of these utensils. Ba'a zahav, ba'a kikar. So it tells me that if you make the menorah out of gold, then it has to have a weight of a kikar. That's the metal. That's the weight of the gold.
Kikar
Now,
is like a...
how much is a kikar? Meya ve'esrim mana, 120 mana, which is 100 esrim v'chamisha slime, which is 25 slime, and a sela is 4 gold coins. So it's a lot, right? It's a big amount, this kikar. So, if you're going to make it out of gold, you need a kikar. Giviyah, then a pasuk says, Giviyah kaftoreh ufracheha, that the goblets, the flowers, the balls, right, shall come from it. Ba'a zahav. Ba'a gvim kaftur mufrachim. If you again say if it's made out of gold, then it needs to have these decorations upon it as well. Eina ba'a zahav. If it doesn't come from gold, eina ba'a gvim kaftur mufrachim. Then it does not need any of these other things. Now, this is critical and important because we're going to see, and the prohibition against making imitations of utensils of the Beis Hamikdash. Why is it that if I make this menorah, but I make it 7, but I don't put any of the flowers on it, isn't that also not the same? The answer is no, because the flowers and all that was only required if I made it of gold. If I made it of any other metal, then it would have been fine. So therefore, that would have been a kosher menorah. So therefore, that's why we can't make anything out of anything that's 7. Okay, so now, again, another time it says gold tells me that only those other things are only required if it's made out of gold. Ve'emanami ba'zav ba'kanim. Maybe, ena ba'azav, ena ba'kanim. So, how about the fact that it needs to be made with branches, right? It says if it's gold, then it shall have branches. So, is that one dependent on the other, right? The answer is no. That couldn't be because hahu pamut mikri. If you only have a candelabra with only one branch, that's not a candelabra. That is a candlestick, right? So that's not a menorah. So therefore, it's called a menorah. So that doesn't work. So it's got to have all the branches. The branches for sure is not the issue. Okay, so now, the Torah says, "V'zem ma'aseh hamenorah miksha zahav." The menorah was beaten out of gold. Ba'a zahav, ba'a miksha. The next time it says zahav is tell me it has to be if it comes as gold, then it comes out of one piece. Eina ba'a zahav, it doesn't come out of gold. Eina ba'a miksha, it does not need to be beaten out of one piece. Miksha de seifa. So now we've explained all the golds. Right? One time it says, each time it says gold. Now, miksha de seifa l'mayos. Why does it say miksha again? L'me'ute chatzotros. To tell us that the only things that have to be eaten out of a single piece, that's the menorah. The trumpets, which are talked about in this section, do not need to be beaten out of one piece. The silver trumpets. D'tanya werner brisa. Chatzotros, the silver trumpets that they used to blow in order to gather the congregation, and also during the sacrifices themselves. Hayuboin min ha'eshes. So they were supposed to be brought from one solid piece, and min ha'kesef, and from silver. Also min ha'grutos, but if you made them from pieces, ksherim, they are kosher. Right? You can have a screw together trumpet, that's okay. Mishar mini matachos psul, but you cannot make them out of any other metal. They have to be silver. Can't make them out of any metal. Why is it that the trumpets have to be made out of silver? They can't be made out of anything else. But the menorah can be made out of any metal. Because the pasuk says kesef havaya. Because there it says you shall make you make the kesef, and then it has v'hayulecha. They shall be to you to call the congregation. Mina grutos nami miksha ve'havaya. But also, when it says that they have to be beaten out of a single piece, it also says ta'aseh osam, that it says miksha ta'aseh osam, with the lashon of havaya they shall be. Miat rachmana gabi menorah miksha. The answer is there's an extra time the word miksha is written by the menorah to tell me that the menorah is the only one that has to be beaten out of a solid piece. Velo chatzotros. It, but not the chatzotros. The chatzotros do not have to be made out of a single piece. Tana Rabbanan. The rabbis say, Kol ha'kelim, chavchas amad beis, Kol ha'kelim she'asa Moshe. All the kelim that Moshe Rabbeinu made, ksherim lo, ksherim ledoros. He could use them, and also they were able to be used in the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash later on. They were all kosher, except chatzotros ksherim lo psulos ledoros, not the trumpets that they made for him. His trumpets were his, and they had to make new trumpets for the future generations. Why? Chatzotros my taima. What is the reason why the chatzotros, these silver trumpets, were different? Maybe because the pasuk says, "Asay lecha," you shall make the chatzotros. So it's specifically a mitzvah for Moshe. Lecha v'lo ledoros means that these shall belong to you, but not for all generations. Elameata, if that's true, vasisa lecha aron eitz. It also says, Moshe, you shall make for you a wooden box, which then gets covered with gold inside and out for the aron. So that means hachanami de lecha v'lo ledoros. That means they should be yours and you have to make a new aron for the other generations. No, so that's not true, of course. Ella, ilaman da amar licha mishocha. The answer is we can give an answer according to Rabbi Yoshia, who holds in Maseches Yuma, that when the word licha, what does it teach me? It tells me that Moshe Rabbeinu had to pay for the trumpets out of his own money. And also, ilaman da amar, or according to the one that says kibiyochol, b'shachani rotzei yosem Hashem, that Hashem was saying, you know what? It's the community money, but I want, Moshe, it's as if I really want your money more than everybody else's, right? Your stuff is more important. So Hainami, so here too, mi boy le'lahachi. That's why it says here by the trumpets, it says to tell me that the chatzotros, right? That's why it says that these utensils are made with yours, not to tell you either that Moshe's money is more valuable or that Moshe actually had to pay for it, but that's what the point of this trumpets here as well. It's not telling you that it's not valid for all generations. So no, Shani Halsam. There it's different. By the trumpets it's different. Damar Kar, the pasuk says, Lecha lecha trezimni. It says lecha twice. So that means Asay lecha v'hayu lecha. You shall make it, and they shall be for you. Which means that these are Moshe's trumpets. Only Moshe was able to use the trumpets, and they need to make new trumpets for all future generations. Tani, we learned, Rav Papa, Brei de Rav Chanin, Kamei de Rav Yosef. Rav Papa, the son of Rav Chanin, said in front of Rav Yosef, Menorah haisa ba minha eshes. The menorah was made from a single piece. Mina zahav, from gold. Asal shel kesef, if they made it out of silver, kshera, that would be kosher. Shel ba'atz, right? If they made it out of tin, okay, good. Vishal aver or lead, vishal gistron or some kind of metal alloy, some mixture of metals. Rebbe Posel, right? It's actually Rashi says that the word for that he says gistron. Gistron he calls metal, right? That's actually Rashi uses an old French word, metal. So the metal is, I guess, the mixture of the metals. Okay, so Rebbe says if he makes according to this, only gold according to Rav Papa, the son of Rav Chanin, he says only gold and silver. Right. Can't use any of these other metals. For Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says they are all kosher. Shel eitz v'shel etzem, if they're made out of wood or bone, v'shel zuchis or glass, divra kol psul. Everyone says that's puzzle. So Amar Lei, so Rav Yosef says to Rav Papa, my datach, what are you holding here? Why do you say that? Amar Lei, bein mar, kol prati darshi. The answer is, it's a klal prat rule here, right? Here's how this works, right? Mihu mar savar ma prat mefor shamateches. What happens is the pasuk says, "Vasisim menorah zav, you shall make the menorah of gold." Tahor miksha tasem menorah. That's in it, and so it says, sorry, vasisim menorah. So you should make the menorah. That's the general. Vasisa, which means that you should make it from anything. Then it says zahav tahor, gold. That's specific. And then it says miksha tasem menorah. You shall make the menorah beaten, which means that's a generalization. So I've got generalization, specific, and generalization. So I'm going to say it's like anything that's similar to the specific. So ma prat mefurish shel matechas, just like the specific gold is a metal. Av kol shel matechas, you can make it out of any metal. Umar Savar, the other one says uma prat mefurish davar chashuv. One says it has to be a valuable metal, gold. Av kol davar chashuv, also silver. That's a valuable metal. The other metals are not. Amar Lei, so Rav Yosef says to Rav Papa, Sami didach mi kami didi. He says, my teaching is better than your teaching. Titania, we learn in a brisa. Kli shari shalsam shel eitz. If I make the menorah, if I make any of the utensils out of wood, Rebbe says it's possible. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda machshir. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher. Okay, you can make it out of wood even. You can even make a menorah out of wood. So, but my kamiflagi, how are they arguing? Rebbe Dorsh Kali Prati, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda Dorsh Ribuyu Miyuti. The answer is they have a difference of view, whether this is a klal pratu klal or this is what we call a ribui miut v'ribui. The difference is klal pratu klal means that you're only going to look at what is similar to the detail. Gold is a metal, therefore it's metal. Otherwise, you're going to look at anything that's more generally similar to the gold, and we're going to see that in a moment. Right? Rebbe Darsh Kali Prati. Rebbe holds that it's a klal prat, and he says like this: Vasisa menorahs. You're going to make the menorah. That's the klal. Zav tar out of gold. That's the zav tar. That's the prat. That's the detail. Miksha ta'aseh menorah. It shall be beaten. The menorah shall be beaten. Chazor klal. That's the generality. Klal prat to klal. The rule is that I have a generality, specific generality. Iyata don elakaina prat. I have to be able to say only materials that are similar to the detail. Ma prat mefur shamatechas. Just like gold is metal. Of course, so to any metal. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda Darish Ribo Yomiyute, he says like this: Vasis menorahs riba, any type of menorah, that's the general. Zav tar miyat, the specificity, the detail of is the gold. Miksha tasem menorah is the generality. Chazav riba, riba miyat v'riba, riba hakol. Everything is included. My Rabbi Komili includes everything. So my miyat, you're only going to exclude one thing. What's the one thing you're going to exclude? Miyat shel cheres. Just don't make it out of pottery. right? Don't make it out of clay. So I can make my menorah, I can make my dreidel out of clay, cannot make my menorah out of clay.
I won't play with the dreidel.
That's right, no. So Adrabah, he says back, Rav Papa says to Rav Yosef, Adrabah, somebody mine is better than yours, right? Because lo salka daitach, you can't hold that it's acceptable made out of wood. Titania in a brisa, ein lo zahav, if you don't have gold to make a menorah, maybe af shel kesef, you can also make it out of silver. Shel nechoshes, shel barzel, you can make it out of bronze, you can make it out of iron. Shel bedil, out of tin. Shel ferris, out of lead. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, machshir af shel bishel eitz. And Rabbi Yehuda says it can even be made out of wood. Right, so you can even make it out of wood. V'tanya idoch. Then we have another brisa that says lo yaseh adam beis tavnis heichal. Right, you're not allowed to make your house. Not allowed to make anything which is an imitation of the Mishkan. Right, can't make a house in the same dimensions as the Beis Hamikdash dimensions. Achsadra, you can't make a front porch keneged ulam in the same dimensions as the front area of the Beis Hamikdash.
In Israel and in Baltimore, they have a Chabad house that looks exactly like 770.
770 is okay. Lahavdil, it's different than the Beis Hamikdash.
Yeah.
Chatzer keneged azara. The chatzer, you can't make a yard in front in the same shape, dimensions as the courtyard. Make a table keneged shulchan, like that looks exactly like the model of the shulchan in the Beis Hamikdash. Menorah keneged menorah, can't make a menorah like a menorah. That's what we've been talking about. Aval osehu shel chamisha, you can make a menorah that has 5 branches. V'shel shisha, or it has 6 branches. V'shel shmona, or has 8 branches. V'shel shiva lo yaseh, cannot make one from 7. V'afilu mishar minei matachos, even from other types of metal, because that would be a kosher menorah, right? But it sounds like you could make it out of wood. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Omer, af shel eitz lo yaseh, says Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, not out of wood. Kederach, why? Kederach she'osu mache beis chashmonai, because the Chashmonaim, when they came to light the menorah after the battle in Hanukkah, the menorah was plundered and it was no good. So they had to remake a menorah. They didn't have any fancy materials. They took some spears that they had and they just put them together and they built a menorah out of wood. That's what they had. Wow. So Amru Lo, he says, wait a second. Misham Raya, that's your proof. The Chashmonai made it out of wood. So therefore you're proving to me that only wood is, that even wood is acceptable. And because I remember that Rav Yosef is saying that no, nobody holds that wood is acceptable. Mm-hmm. He says, no. Shipudim shel barzel hayu. They were metal poles. They had metal spits. That's what their metal poles that they were using out of iron. That's what their weapons. V'chipum babats, and they covered them with tin. Shiru, then they got wealthier. Asum shel kesef, they upgraded and they got to a silver menorah. Chazru v'shiru, then they got wealthier. Asum shel zahav, and they made it of gold. So therefore, no proof that they were actually made out of wood. But yeah, who knew that the menorah, the Chashmonaim built, was potentially even made out of wood?
Amazing.
Good.
They upgraded as they went.
And they upgraded us.